From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
Hi guys, you have reached the Badass Counseling Show. This is a lightning round, super fast, super quick, lots of super deep and super interesting questions to which I will provide banal, dry, meaningless answers.
Again?
I am Sven the host of the Badass Counseling Show, and wherever you are tuning in from, be it Missouri or the UK or South Africa or Perth, wherever it is, it's wonderful to have you here. I am joined in studio by my team, KC over in the booth, and Rob the Rocket. Rob, what say you, Rob?
I'm on the team, and here it is, Memorial Day weekend already.
Wow.
It's amazing how fast this year is going.
Zippity zip. Nice to have a couple extra days off. It's wonderful. May was packed for me. Well, we've got a bunch of questions being fired at us already, so we're going to go ahead and dive in and start taking your questions, people. I've got the opener right here from Melissa, and Melissa is saying, now the divorce is final, and him and his girlfriend broke up. Now he's being nice to me, and he apologized. Now, you don't actually give a question, Melissa. However, you wouldn't state that and make an issue of, posting it and so forth, unless it was somewhat, I'm sensing a little bit of a tone of pissed and a little bit of what the hell's going on. The divorce over, he and his girlfriend have broken up, and now he's being nice to me and apologized. It's almost as though he's trying to kiss your ass and win his way back. It's almost as though the apologizing and being nice isn't benign. It's almost as though he's driving towards something. Now, the truth is this, he may be just, realizing his errant ways and wanting to apologize for the shit he did, but more than likely, he's either wanting you back or he's wanting your attention. This is quite possible someone who just needs a woman giving him attention. Now that he's lost his girlfriend, he's going back to you, right? And it sounds like this is potentially an issue for you. Otherwise, why would you have even posted it here? And I'm guessing the issue might be that you're wondering what the hell to do about it. Well, my question would, of course, be, what do you want to do about it? And then why not just do that? But just in case your thought is, gee, should I get close to him again, or what should I do? The real question you have to ask yourself is, first of all, you guys divorced for a reason, but more importantly, the question is not, has he changed? The question is, and remember this is to everyone who is stepped out of a relationship, maybe you're separated, maybe you got a divorce, and maybe you're thinking about getting back into the relationship. Maybe they claim to have changed, and they want you back, and I didn't mean to cheat, I'll never do it again, or whatever it might be, I'll treat you better this time, and you're thinking about going back into it. If you're thinking about going back into it, the thing you have to ask yourself is twofold. One, if they've supposedly changed, the question you have to ask yourself is, why have they changed now? See, now they're doing if you're ever thinking about taking somebody back, right? And they're just like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I've done this and I've changed and I'll even go to therapy. And they're basically pink bows and cotton candy and fucking roses and rainbows out their asshole. If they're like that, right? It's like all of a sudden they're what you always wanted them to be. Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? It's like all of a sudden they know exactly what I want, and it feels good because you've been wanting this the whole time. But it raises the question, why now? And how is it they know exactly what I want? Oh, shit, they've been listening the whole time. They've known what I want, and now they're giving it, which implies they heard it before and didn't give it. They heard what you wanted, but they're only giving it now. Why? Because they want something. It wasn't enough that in the past you wanted it for you. Now they only want to give it because they want something. And what they really want back is not you. They don't want you. It feels like they do because they're doing all the nice things. What they want back is their love source. They want you back to pour love into their love cup. It's not that they want to pour love into your love cup. They'll do that as long as it takes to get you back to pouring love into their love cup. Going back to the situation where they get everything. It's what I call a high yield, low cost relationship. Cost them very little. They'll slip right back into those old patterns, yet they'll get you given everything. And you'll be 6, 9, 12 months down the road and you'll be like, fucking hell, I'm right back where I was. Okay, so the first question is, why are they changed now? And doesn't that mean they've seen it the whole time? And they only want it now because they want me back. But the second and infinitely more important question is this. It's not have they changed. The real question is, because if they haven't changed, they're going to slide right back slowly into their old habits, aren't they? Thus, the most important question, if you're ever considering taking someone back or going back into a relationship, single most important question is not whether or not they've changed. The question is, have you changed? Because the simple fact of the matter is that of it is this: if they start to slide, you have to catch them. You have to say no. And it turned into a full flying shit show with flying monkeys before, because at times you weren't saying no, or sometimes you were, sometimes you weren't. It's like training a dog. You can't say no sometimes and yes other times to a dog, or the dog's like, well, fuck, I'll do whatever I want because I don't know if I'm getting happy owner or mean owner today, right? Mixed messages. So have you changed such that you can hold them accountable at every motherfucking turn? That is the question. And I'm betting if you're even considering taking them back, you haven't done the work to fully change yourself. Therefore, you are defenseless as they begin the slow slide back into their old self. Next question. How do I stop a physical reaction to trauma? I physically shake if my mom texts me. I am a big believer in the cure for the pain is in the pain, as the old Sufi poet Rumi says. So what I'm saying is, A, block your mom so you don't get her text if you don't want to deal with her. Why are you still interacting with someone whose mere presence or even a text from them causes you to shake with likely anger or sadness or rage or a whole jumble of feelings that are just like stirred up in you instantly? Why are you still interacting with that person? And you can if you want. I'm just wondering why. But more importantly, the only way we create a long-term cure rather than a way of coping with it when it happens, is by going into it and beginning to feel it all and flushing it out, using things such as deep counseling, such as journaling, such as writing letters you do not send, and some of the other tools that I teach in my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. But those physical reactions aren't going to go away until the core issue driving those physical reactions up here on the surface. And those behaviors ain't going to change long-term until you change the core beliefs driving them, and the pain and the BS beliefs and the fears driving them. So you have to go into that, which is, of course, is precisely why I wrote my book, to walk you into that and begin the healing process from it. All right. Rob, you got one over there?
Yeah, I got a good co-parenting question, and it's about an older child. I'll be interested in your response.
All right.
Charmaine on YouTube says, my 17-year-old has chosen to go live with his father because his father is letting him do whatever he wants, including drinking, smoking, and skipping school. How do I handle this with my son?
Okay, I'm going to assume that you are having, you're co-parenting, so I'm going to assume you have roughly 50% of the time. The way you cope with this, your son, is you have to be willing to be the unfun parent. Now, that doesn't mean you're the dick parent. It means you're the unfun parent. That means you hold your boundaries, you hold accountable, you have expectations, you still give love, but you are predictable and you are consistent in following through. Don't slide into the temptation of competing for funness. You want to know why? Because you're doing it because you want the kid to like you. If there's a fun parent and an unfun parent, the unfun parent suffers from the fact that the child will say, you're mean, you're not like dad, you're not like mom, you're a bitch, you're a jerk, I hate you. You're going to have to suffer through all of that. And if you are not, and this isn't just to you who asked the question, that's to any of us. If you can't handle your child saying, I hate you, then you need to do some more self-work, because your child is going to say they hate you. You don't have a teenager till they're shouting that at the top of their lungs, slamming a door, stomping their feet, right? You got to be able to handle that. You got to be able, it may sting, but you got to be doing your work to flush that pain out, because the child has to know that you are a vessel large enough to contain their pain, that you are a salad bowl big enough for the mixed salad that is their messy little life. All right? But you have to be consistent. This child needs boundaries. Children won't realize it till they're in their 30s or their 40s, but boy, was I glad that my parents held me to it. Boy, was I glad that they gave a shit enough to discipline me. Do you know how many clients I have in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, wishing that their parent had given enough of a shit to discipline them, to make them have chores, to teach them responsibility, to hold them accountable when they didn't do their chores, to have a stern word if it was necessary. It shows you care. Because if you don't do that, remember, you guys, children, all of us, what do we want? We want positive attention. We call it love, but it's really positive attention. A gift, a kind word, a hug, time together. All those things are forms of positive attention, and a child wants those. Absent that, if a child cannot get positive attention, they will settle for gladly. If they're not getting it over time, they'll stop trying, and they will gladly settle for negative attention. Getting yelled at, getting grounded, getting spanked. Do you want to know why? Because negative attention beats the living shit out of no attention. Because no attention means I don't see you, you don't matter, I don't care. So all they want is for you to see them. Now, optimally, they would love for you to get to know them and so on and so forth. So back to your question, what do you do if the other parent is all fucking letting them drink and smoke and stay out late and all those things? What do? You be the parent. Be the one adult in the room and do not waver from that. Give your child love, but also give them firmness. Give them the word no. They don't get everything they want, but you still love them. And I just did a post on this week. One of the most important things you can do for your child is to have them hear the word no coming from you, and yet they know they're loved at the same time. Otherwise, if they're always getting yes, they will equate the yeses and getting everything with love. That I am only feeling loved when I get things. And guess what? That's a breeder for. Extreme takers, folks, i.e. narcissists. They have to know that the word no doesn't mean I'm not loved. Rob, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, Charmaine said yes with 3 exclamation points. I am the unfun parent for sure, but definitely will continue with love. Thank you so much.
Good girl. All right, here we go. And Danielle just sort of asked the same sort of question over here on Facebook. Do I make a 13-year-old daughter deal with her narcissistic dad? Well, this is actually different. Since no contact is a rule for these people, do I let her make this decision later in life or now to avoid abuse, neglect? You said there's a no contact. That implies, you're telling me then that the daughter is having no contact with her dad, and you're asking, do you make a 13-year-old daughter, and you put in quotes, deal with her narcissistic dad? It's a bit of a confusing question. If there's a no contact, then the courts obviously believe there should be no contact between the daughter and the father for a reason. I'm betting it wouldn't have even gone to the courts unless you took it there. And so do I let her make the decision? Yeah, she can make the decision later since no contact is the rule for these people, do I let her make this decision later in life or now to avoid abuse, neglect? I would honestly recommend, it depends why the no contact is in place. Is it drug use in front of the child? Is it physical abuse? Is it sexual abuse? Is it verbal abuse? If there is abuse, yeah, you have an obligation to protect the child. But if it's just like, he's not always around or doesn't always follow through on his word, I would allow the parent, the father, if the father it sounds like father because your name is Danielle, if the father wants to have contact, let him write a letter or let him drop a note or whatever and send it to you, and you maybe monitor that. But if there is abuse, no, keep the child away and let the child make the decision later. But remember, you are the parent, you are the adult. And if there's no contact in place, it's in place for a reason. All right, next question. Chris over on TikTok is basically asking the same question. What if you haven't heard from your child's father in 7 months? You'll let it go and you move forward. You move forward and you keep loving on that child and you encourage the child. Don't push, but let the child know that it's important for them to get their feelings out and that you are here to listen and then you're going to listen, and don't try to fix that child. Just listen and say, I'm sorry, and that must be really hard, and it's going to be okay, sweetheart, and let it out. What else are you feeling? What's the hardest part? Those are all phrases. Get in the habit of using if you have kids. And then also a couple things, get the child into counseling. And if the child has an adult beyond you whom you trust, maybe it's one of your siblings or maybe it's a favorite teacher, and go to that adult and say, hey, would you be willing to just, see how my daughter or son is doing now and then? Because sometimes it's easier to open up to someone that isn't family. All right, next question. My physical reaction when journaling anger is scary. Do I keep going when my heart feels ripped out? I mean, if you can, hell yeah, man, you're there. If you are having a physical reaction, listen up, folks. If you are in counseling, if you are journaling, if you are writing letters you don't send, maybe you're having feelings come up at random times. Maybe it's in the yoga class. Maybe it's when you're driving. Maybe it's when you're out on a walk. If you're having any sort of physical reaction to an emotion, and that can include not just you feel your blood boiling, but it can be laughing. It can be shaking. It can be crying. It can be yawning. It can be stretching. It can feel like moving around. You get fidgety. All of these are physical reactions to an emotional, some sort of emotional conjuring. That's when you know you've hit something. I have had a few clients in the last month who they start yawning. When they start yawning, it's like, oh, we're on the shit, aren't we? Or they get really tired all of a sudden. It's like, oh, we're there. We're there. They're feeling it. I mean, it's such a tell. It's such an easy tell. And they want to like, oh, I want to rest a little bit. I'm like, well, let's go a little bit more. Let's go a little bit more. So you ask, you say, I start, having a physical reaction when I'm journaling on anger and it's scary. Do I keep going when my heart feels ripped out? Yeah, if you can. And keep flushing it out and what you're really feeling and maybe who you're feeling angry at. Write that letter right in that second. So you have your journaling going on this notebook and you have, your letter writing going on this notebook and just keep flushing, right? Now, one little tip, you guys, one little tip. This is a Sven tip. And you've heard me do it before, but it's this. If you have a lot of anger that you are journaling on, or finding yourself in anger, or one person, I have a client, I actually have a session with him tomorrow. One client in particular who was doing journaling on family stuff, particularly one parent in particular who had been abusive. And every time he would even think about journaling, before I ever even got him journaling on his mom, before he could even think about journaling, he'd sit down and he'd have to get up and he'd have to walk around the house. And then he'd get like 3 sentences in, he'd have to get up, walk around the block. There's just so much. And so I gave him a little tip. I said, hey man, try this. I knew he was a guy that goes to the gym. And I said, bring your journal with you and write that letter to your mom or journal to your mom in between sets. Right? And he's like, why? It's fucking stupid. Why would I journal at the gym? I said, all right, dickhead. I'll tell you why. Because if you're going to conjure all that energy, all that anger, you're going to have that physical response. Why not channel it in the direction of that barbell, of that cast iron? And he's like, all right, I'll try it. In the follow-up session, he's like, holy Christ, Sven, I've never had workouts so powerful. Man, you pair up that emotional anger and that emotional energy and channel it into lifting. It's like, oh my God, those workouts. I said, yeah, no kidding, numbskull. And so that I recommend that. But yeah, you're going to have a physical conjuring of energy. When you are down into your deepest pain, your deepest betrayal, frustration, anger, rage, sadness, you're going to have physical responses. Keep going if you can. And if you need to take a break at that point, take a break and come back to it. But you need to allow for the fact that you're going to have physical responses. And if you're not having physical responses of some sort, I'm willing to bet you have some sort of blockage. You need to go a bit deeper. Rob, go ahead.
Kind of a follow-up from YouTube. It's Barbara who says, do you recommend reading what you have journaled?
Okay, Barbara, that's a great question, and I get asked that a lot. That is strictly a personal question. It's optional. Okay, I will say this. Some people journal with pen and paper. I do. Some people journal on their computer. I do that as well because my fingers can move really fast, all right? And I can type faster and so forth, and whatever. Or sometimes I just have my computer in front of me. I'm on a plane, and I just start. Okay, I've journaled on cocktail napkins, journaled on, tampon or two over time, not a tampon, but a maxi pad over time. So it was the only thing. I was in the bathroom maybe late at night. My wife is asleep and it's like, I'm in the bathroom and I got a pen. I'm a fucking writer. I always have a pen, but I didn't have anything to write on. So I went under the sink and there was a fucking mini pad or something. Started fucking writing, man. I didn't want to turn on the lights. It'd wake her up, Bad husband woke me up, but good husband for using mini pad.
Stop digging.
And no. But this is the point. You journal on whatever the hell you got to journal on. I used to journal on my hand when I was riding my bike back when I was living in Oakland and Berkeley and stuff and going to graduate school as well. I'd journal, if I was on my bike, I'd journal notes on my hand, all sorts of shit. But you asked the question, but some people journal into their phone. Now, this is a new phenomenon. Some people type it out in their phone. Now, that's not my thing, but Apple, on one of its latest updates about 3-4 months ago, they sent everybody the journal app. So you can journal on your phone, except me, big fingers, small screen, so it doesn't work for me. Some people do the voice to text into their phone. Now, this is the one I want to call out on. People doing voice to text into your phone as your form of journaling, maybe while you're walking, maybe while you're driving, whatever. I have no problem with that as long as you go back, and then I do want you to read it. Then I do want you to go in and edit it. Why? Because when we're talking things out, it's gone. It's gone as soon as I can talk as fast as I can think, or faster, which is why I get into trouble sometimes. Okay, so it's gone. Part of what makes journaling effective is you're forced to stay in it. That's why going back in and feeling it and reading it, and we so often learn so much by reading what we've written. When I have all my clients write their autobiography before we start counseling, I ask them what it was like writing the autobiography. Sometimes I'll ask them and they'll say, holy shit, after I got it out there and saw what my life was, it was startling, or it was revolting, or it was exciting, whatever. That when something is out of us, even if it's our own story, we see it differently. Okay. But you're asking the question, just as a somewhat routine rule, should I go back and read my journaling? It's totally optional. If you want to, do it. If it helps you, go for it. If you don't feel the need, don't. Some people keep their journals and read them. Some people keep them and don't read them. Some people don't keep them. So when I journal at the gym or whatever, like just today, I was journaling at the gym, I usually tear it up, throw it away, or I'll flush it down the toilet. Why? I don't really keep my journals anymore. I had fucking wall full of journals more than once, and I just would burn them over time and so forth. But that's totally optional. Okay. Jane asks, are these lives on YouTube later? They're actually on YouTube right now. We are live on YouTube, and the ones that we post on YouTube, they will go up and stay up for 12 to 24 hours, but then it will get reposted later. This episode will actually go up end of May. It will get reposted later as an actual podcast episode. I need you guys to understand, especially the old dogs in the audience, okay? Young folks understand what I'm saying. I'm just doing a live here, and we're taping it to be a podcast episode later. A live and a podcast are two separate things, okay? That means a live is just somebody who wants to go up live and say, hey, look, my name's Ding Dong, okay? That's me. But a podcast is, hey, I'm Ding Dong, we're talking about this, and it's going to go onto our podcast channel X number of days from now. So we are taping a podcast. This particular episode will go up on YouTube in a few weeks. We have lots of past episodes. And remember, with the Badass Counseling Show, all of our counseling episodes, where I'm literally counseling people on the show, go up every Thursday. And these lightning rounds, they go up every Sunday. Okay? If you want to be on the Badass Counseling Show as a guest, whom I will counsel for free, no charge, write into production@badasscounseling.com. Do not go on the website and click on the contact page and reach out to the contact page, because that goes to my assistant at a different email address. Those are for people who actually want counseling with me versus wanting to be on the show and get counseled. Two different things. Production@badasscounseling.com. If you want to be counseled on the show, my producers look through it. They pick out whichever one and just send in one paragraph, not a long one, about 200, 250 words of what you're struggling with most. And then they go through and they pick out lots of folks for the show. So much more to come right after this short break.
My best friend made me listen to some podcast, said it had blown her away. So we listened to a lightning round of the Badass Counseling Show together. All I can say is, wow. First podcast I had ever listened to. Now it's my addiction. If you haven't done it yet, you need to subscribe to the Badass Counseling Show.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform, and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
And we are back with a lightning round of the Badass Counseling Show. We are taping presently live on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. Great to have everyone here. Next question. How do I move on from trauma? How do I know when I'm over it? How do you move on from trauma? You move on from trauma, as I mentioned earlier, by going into it. I'm a big believer in this. There are schools of counseling and so forth that say, no, you don't want to go into it. You could re-traumatize and so on and so forth, and that's fine. And there are different strokes for different folks, different techniques. I am an absolute believer of going into it. Bit by bit, maybe a microdose it to start, but as you get more and more comfortable going into pain and learning tools for flushing it out, you get better and you can take on more and more. So how do I move on from it? By going into it. Have you truly allowed yourself to feel it all, or are there aspects of it still that you don't want to think about, that you don't want to feel, you don't want to talk about it? If you still have some of those, you're not over it. Now, the truth is you can move past it, some would argue, by just locking it down, bottling it up, and move on forward. Pack up your troubles in the old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. I'm not a fan of that because I don't believe it works long term. It'll manifest in other ways. You'll have triggers. You'll get pissed. You'll become short. You'll become sad a lot, or it'll affect your career decisions, all of these things. So you go into it and you begin flushing it out. As I coach in my books and as you guys hear me talk about on the show and so on and so forth. So your second question is, how do you know when you're over it? You know you're over it when you can think about it thoroughly and there are no emotional charges. When it has simply become a memory. Not a memory that still has emotional charges attached to it. Emotional charges like electrons spinning around a nucleus. There are charges. And if you still get triggered by certain things or certain things set you off because they remind you of that or they make you feel what you were feeling back then, you're not over it. Okay? Those are the basics. Those are just the basics for how you know. All right, next question. Here we go. My in-laws say that we are the ones who need to visit them. They won't visit our children, but drive 40 miles to visit their other grandchildren. Ouch. You're getting the big fuck you from the in-laws. I'm going to read this back to you guys. My in-laws say that we are the ones who need to visit them. They won't drive to visit our children, but drive 40 miles to visit their other grandchildren. Well, my question would really be to your spouse. What does your spouse think of that? Because what I'm willing to bet, and this isn't a pretty thing to hear or think about, what I'm willing to bet is that your in-laws either don't think as highly of their child, your spouse, or for some reason they don't like you, or they don't like your house, or there is something they don't like. Now, you don't say how far away you are, but the fact that you say 40 miles to visit their other children, grandchildren, implies that 40 miles is more than what it is to your place. It almost seems to imply you're close enough. They expect you to just bring the grandkids to them. And you wouldn't even bring this up unless you're feeling insulted, because fundamentally you're feeling like they're not willing to work for you and your kids. They want it handed to them. And you don't state a question with it, but obviously it hurts. It has to hurt because they're just saying you exist to serve us and we shouldn't have to come and see you. And they are clearly clueless enough to not realize how much that hurts your feelings and how offensive that is. So what do you do? Well, the bottom line is there are a couple of ways to play this. You can play nice and just go over and say, okay, here we come. And just do that, stay on that. But obviously that's not working for you because you're slowly becoming bitter that way. Or you could say, you know what? If you guys are, let's say on a weekly basis, you could say, you know what? We're going to bring them this week and then you can come see them next week if you want to see them. They'll be like, no, you should come to us. These are the terms. And then if they just say, fine, we'll just see them every 2 weeks, then you'll say, fine, then let's just shoot for once a month and you can come and see them. Or you can come and see them twice a month, but we'll be there. Let's see, today is April 30th. We'll bring them out to see you on June 1st. Or whatever it is. The point is, whatever the speed or the rate of them seeing their grandkids is, if it's once a week or every other day or once every 3 weeks, string that out. Because here's the thing, grandchildren, generally speaking, love to see their grandkids, generally speaking. All right? And so I hate to fucking say this, but, well, no, that's not actually what I want to say.
Are you saying grandchildren like to see the grandparents or vice versa?
Vice versa. I'm saying both.
Okay.
I'm saying both. Assuming the grandparents aren't dicks, the grandchildren love to see them, but grandparents generally like to see grandchildren. Which I hate to say it, but to some degree you have the leverage because you have the wanted commodity. Now, the thing is, if you have grandparents who don't want to see their grandkids, then it's perhaps in your best interest not to have the grandchildren around their grandparents. But here's the other thing, and this is why it goes back to your spouse. What does your spouse think of all this? Because it could be that your spouse is not willing to stand up to his or her parents. Then you've got a separate problem. But the bottom line is you have what they want and they need to get on board and they need to treat you with respect. And you just put your needs out there, you put your wants out there and watch how they respond. And if they truly give a shit and are decent people, they will respond in a kind and reasonable way. And if they're not, then you may have to pull back a bit from that relationship. Next question. Go ahead, Rob.
All right. This is on YouTube from Nicole. I'm going to try to make it a little clearer. Before separation, I transcribed 6 months straight of all interactions with my narcissistic ex. Is it wrong for me to upload all to YouTube because he caused our son to wish me dead?
You want to upload all of that to YouTube because he caused your son to want me to be dead.
Turned his son against her, apparently.
Right. And so you're wondering, hey, would it be all right to download the transcriptions or upload them to YouTube? You want the real answer? I bet that would feel pretty fucking good, wouldn't it? Stick a fucking dagger in his heart for what he's done to you, right? I mean, I'd feel good for a fucking day. Actually, I'd feel good while getting it in there and just the rush of, I'm going to kick your fucking ass. That would feel good. But the bottom line is it doesn't really solve the problem, does it? In fact, it actually enhances precisely what he's teaching the child. He's teaching the child that you're a crazy asshole. I don't know if the father did that, so you must be the wife, assuming, unless it's a gay marriage, then you're the other husband. But Nicole. So Nicole, what that does is you're actually confirming his point. If he's telling the child that you're crazy or you're bad or whatever, you do that, you're going to look even more psycho to anyone, really, to even an outside observer. And the truth is, if we're really being honest, for the most part, nobody cares. Nobody's going to want to read that shit. Nobody's going to want to listen. I mean, maybe some people will. So then you got to ask yourself, what are you and I'm not putting you down for the impulse. I wouldn't even, if you want to do it, do it. Go for it. God bless you. 100% go for it. So I'm not scolding you or saying you shouldn't. And I'm just wondering what is accomplished by doing it, except maybe you feel better because you're hurting him. And this is where the bloodbath gets even worse. But worse for you is you are confirming for your son, because your ex will be able to point to this and say, hey, son, look what she's doing. She's out of control. She's crazy. And he gets to write the narrative. He gets to frame these actions that you're doing however he wants. He gets to write the script. And all he has to say, look, your mom is psycho, right? And posting that sort of thing online, could look that way. Now, I'm betting part of what you want is to be able to post these so that your son can read them, I'm assuming. But then why wouldn't you just give them to your son? No, you're wanting to publicly humiliate him. And I completely understand that impulse. Trust me. I do. But the bottom line is, in the end, in all likelihood, potentially hurts you in the eyes of the son. What do I recommend? I recommend, first of all, you find avenues to flush out all your hatred, because that's what this is. This is fucking bitter, vile hatred. And I tell you what, somebody teaches my children to want me to be dead, I can't deny that I would feel that exact same hatred. I would. But it only makes the situation worse. What you can prove to your son, you have every right to stand up for yourself. You have every right to speak your truth, and you should, because if your son is not getting a counter narrative that I am good, I didn't do these things, and this isn't true, what he said about this, if you're not providing a counter narrative to your ex's story, your son will be inclined to believe the person telling the story, because there's no counter story. So you have every right to provide a counter story to your son, and you have to be strong and you have to be firm. However, what wins the day in the long term, and it may be longer than you want it to be, what wins the day in the long term is, and I hate to say it, but it's real tortoise and hare shit, man. The tortoise wins the day, right? You just move forward. You be consistent. You do everything in your power to flush out your shit. Flush out your own rage and your own pain and your own anger. You do everything to do that. And you be consistent in that child's life. And let the child hate you. Let the child, they can't be disrespectful. They can't be rude. All right? That's not okay. But they can have their feelings. But in the end, the best course, long term, is that you were steady Eddie, and that you kept loving your child and providing consistent boundaries and causes and effects and truth and consequences. But most importantly, all of those swollen feelings of rage and hatred, you got to get that out of you, or that shit will eat you up for a decade, 2 decades. I've seen it. I've lived it. All right. I've lived it. My anger consumed me for about a decade. And then I just finally said, this shit's killing me, and it's putting a cloud over my own kids' heads. Now, granted, to your credit, my kids didn't want me dead. At least they didn't say so. But my strongest recommendation is be that steadying, stable force in that child's life. But you still have every right to stand up for yourself. Next question. How do I get out of my head? It's constantly going. My anxiety is through the roof. All right. Overthinking, perseverating, ruminating. excessively, just thinking constantly. Basically, when we're doing this, two things are happening. One of two things is usually happening. One, we're taking a past incident that provided pain, or that could have been in the form of embarrassment or humiliation or hurt or whatever it was, some sort of painful experience in the past, and we're thinking about it. And our thinking about it is trying to find ways to come to terms with it. We're thinking about it, sorting it through. But the thing is, if it's tumbling, you're never actually getting it out of you. It's staying in you. You guys have heard me say this before. It's like clothes in a clothes dryer. You run those clothes long enough, and let's say the cycle is done, but then it becomes like demon-possessed clothes dryer, and you can't turn it off, and you can't even unplug it. And everything keeps tumbling, and your favorite motherfucking wool sweater is in there. What happens to that wool sweater? It shrinks and shrinks. I'm melting. And it shrinks so small, it ruins it, right? Well, that dryer in your head, that clothes dryer with your ideas tumbling, nothing shrinks. It only gets bigger, right? That's why you say your anxiety is through the roof. So one is we think about past pain of some sort and we ruminate on it. We can't get past it, all right? Because it's still in us. We have to get it out of us, journaling, etc. Okay. But the other thing that drives rumination and overthinking and being able to get out of your head is fear of future pain. And so what we do is we game out. That overthinking is we're constantly gaming out potential scenarios to their logical extreme or their illogical extreme. We have arguments in our head. We replay things and have those over in our head, but specifically the ones for moving forward, we're replaying things so that we won't experience that pain in the future. And so we keep gaming things out. And so a person who gets stuck in their head very often becomes unmotivated or can't take action or can't sustain action. Why? Because they're constantly gaming out of what this could lead to. And so they have so much fear of all the things it could lead to that they never take action because every path comes with potential pain. So they're living constantly in fear. As you hear me say, you need to be flushing all of that out because the more you flush out the thoughts, but especially the feelings attached to them, and get those out on pen and paper or into your computer, the less they're up here. And it's not a one-time deal. Oh, I journaled for an hour and a half and I don't feel any different. No, this is a fucking discipline, a ritual. You keep going back to it, going deeper into what, well, why am I feeling this? What's really going on inside of me? What's my greatest fear in all of this? What's the hardest part? What am I really feeling right now? You keep flushing and you will discern, you will notice your energy calming down. All right. I'm going to take just a few more questions here. How do you begin to recover from a verbal, abusive, controlling parent in your childhood? It's a great question. And this is a huge percentage of my client base and people I counsel on our podcast, the Badass Counseling Show. How do you recover from a verbally abusive, controlling parent in your childhood? Anytime you have pain from your childhood, which is pretty much anyone, if you're listening to my live right now or a podcast on counseling, you have pain in your childhood. You're not listening for shits and giggles. You've likely got stuff you're fucking dealing with. Stuff you're dealing with in your present. And if you know me, I track everything back to childhood. Everything tracks back to childhood. So I'm going to give you the really short answer, Stacey Renee. How do you begin to recover? Just get my fucking book. Seriously. It's 80% of my counseling method. It was written for exactly this. There's a hole in my love cup. You can get it at badasscounseling.com. And also Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. But if you want the audiobook, however, is only available on badasscounseling.com. But all versions are there. But basically what you're going to have to do is go inside and begin to root out or purge out of you the pain, the fears, and the BS beliefs you've been taught about yourself. And this is one thing I want everyone to hear me loud and clear on. Loud and clear. When it comes to the work of, yes, and this means especially you, Rob.
Sir.
All right. When you are doing the work of healing your past, it is ugly. It is scary. I get people saying all the time, oh, I don't like to journal. I'm no good at writing. I don't like to journal. No, you're just scared of going into this shit. You write a note to your girlfriend just fine. You write memos at work just fine. Your writing's fucking fine. You just don't want to touch this shit because it is scary. You don't want to feel the feelings again. You fear getting overwhelmed. Okay, so here's my point. Doing the work of healing your past is scary, it is ugly, and it is hard. But there's one thing it is not. This is a myth. And one of the myths is it's not just scary, ugly, and hard, but it takes a long time. Sorry, it doesn't have to. Sorry, not sorry. It can if you go slow, and there's nothing wrong with that. Go at your own speed. I'm just saying, and I see it day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out. It doesn't have to take forever. The average duration of one of my clients from coming in fully broken to like massive change, it's a few months. It's your willingness to go into it, your level of courage, because the deeper you go, the scarier it motherfucking gets. So yes, it is scary. Yes, it is ugly. Yes, it is hard, but it does not have to take forever. And if it is taking forever, get a new fucking therapist or get new tools in your self-help work, because it's not taking you deep enough. And I'm an avid believer of the belief that transformation can be immediate if you go deep enough. Not necessarily immediate as in right this exact second, but massive chunks of transformation can happen right in this exact second. I've seen it. I've seen it every fucking day. I saw it today with a client. All right? Actually with two clients. Did all of their life's problems become solved? No, but there was a significant shift today. And one's a client who checks back in about every 6 to 9 months. The other one is a client who I've been working on every 10 to 14 days for about 4 hours every session. Massive transformation from massively stuck self-hatred and suicidal to within 2 months, just like even those around her are noticing she's a different person. We've got a bit more work to do, but that's how rapid the change can be. All right, I'm going to take 2 more questions and then we're going to call it a day, folks.
Trigger question here if you'd like.
Yeah, give it to me.
All right. On YouTube from A. Lemaster. When you have PTSD and lose the ability to feel good emotions and are extremely sensitive to physical triggers, how do you recover and stop being so easily triggered?
Yeah. The bottom line is this: when it comes to triggers, and you guys, some of you I know have heard me talk about this before, but when it comes to triggers, there's the trigger and then there's that which is being triggered. You have control over the trigger by avoiding things that anything that might trigger you. Yes, you have some control there, but you're always going to be bumping into things in life that could set you off. And so you begin to live your life in fear of avoiding more and more things that might set you off. And that's a life of fear. I'm sorry, I'm not a believer in living in fear, because I believe fear and happiness are inversely correlated. The more you have of one, the less you have of the other. Okay. But then there's the thing that is being triggered, and that's all of the trauma, all the pain, all those memories in your past that have emotional charges attached to them. Each of those is like a stick of dynamite inside of you, and each of them has a fuse. So when you encounter something that triggers you, it's as if one of those fuses has been lit. Now, you can spend your life trying to avoid anything that looks like a match or a lighter so that those fuses don't get lit, or you can go in and pull the dynamite out. And so what do? You have to go in. As far as the physical response, that's what happens when those triggers get touched, when those things being triggers get touched, being triggered get touched. But it's going in and it's beginning to pluck that stuff out one by one and decharging it. And that's what my books are for, to go in there. And it's not just a matter of feeling the pain physically. You have to put it to words, people. You have to put it to words, which is why the journaling, why the letters you don't send, why the other tools I teach in my book. You have to put it to words. All right, I've got time for one more question. What if you can't remember your childhood? All right, this is very, very, very common, Susie. People saying, I can't remember any of my childhood, or I only remember bits and pieces. And Sven, you always talk about how, healing your childhood. Well, how the hell am I supposed to do with that if I don't remember it? Well, first of all, very often, if you're not remembering your childhood, is because the child's brain has like a shutdown mechanism. It's a self-protection mechanism that when things get too painful, the child quite unknowingly shuts the memories down, sort of a amnesia of sorts, all right? And that protects the child, because thinking about those things and feeling that pain is so overwhelming. It would just shred a child, right? And so then you move into adulthood and I can't remember my childhood, and you can move further along and you're like, wait, I can't remember my childhood. What the fuck is that? Or I want to heal, and this dipshit Sven keeps talking about going into your childhood. So how do I do it if I don't remember? And what I always tell people is, I guarantee you have at least one memory in your entire past leading right up to today. You have at least one memory that has some sort of emotional charge attached to it. It may have been yesterday when you were in the produce aisle and some jerk bumped your cart hard, and then it caused some of your tomatoes to fall on the floor. And so then they're bruised and you had to go back. And just for that moment, you felt a little angry. Start there. Start there with the bruised tomatoes. And I know you're thinking, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Because what you're doing is you're learning. We start with training wheels. Inch by inch, life's a cinch, okay? You now have in your past, even if it's just yesterday, you have an experience of a memory with an emotional charge attached to it. Unlike when you, after the grocery store, went for that burger and the burger was good and it was really no big deal, that's just a memory. There's no real emotional charge attached to when you went and had that hamburger. But there is an emotional charge regarding the tomato and the cart bumping incident. Go back in, write about that cart bumping incident, write about what it felt like. Write about why it felt like that, or if it reminded you of anything. Maybe it didn't, and journal all of that out. Get it out of your system completely till you feel like, oh, I'm kind of past that. All right, now, I guarantee there's another one. Or I guarantee another one is going to happen. I guarantee you have more than one memory in your past that has an emotional charge. Start there. And what you're doing is bit by bit, you are pulling little pebbles out of your love cup, little pebbles of crud out of your love cup. And the better you get at doing it with it small, guess what? You're going to get a little better at doing it with the medium ones. And you're going to think about, and then Thanksgiving is going to come, the holiday in the U.S., and your aunt is going to be the bitch that she always is, and she's going to offend you, and you're going to leave there, or you're going to be anticipating Thanksgiving. You're going to have anxiety over meeting Aunt Millie again because she's such a fucking pain in the ass. And so then you can journal about your anxiety. And then after Thanksgiving, you can journal about how it felt. And gee, it really didn't go so bad, but Uncle Dick was a real dick. And so, real creative with the names. And so you journal about that. And the more you do that, guess what? You're going to have more memories naturally come up because the message you are conveying to your own soul is, I'm ready. I can handle it. I got it. And it'll send up a little bit more. And then you're going to have some memory, or you're going to have a dream that reminds you of something, or an old friend is going to remind you of an event, and you're going to begin to have memories begin to come out in a flow because now you can handle it, and you're deliberately trying to handle it by doing the work of flushing it out and flushing the emotional charges. And more it's going to begin to come out. But it just starts small. Trust me, the rest will come. Now, listen up, you guys. This is actually a really good one, and it goes to a larger issue when it comes to counseling. One of the issues I run into, and I get this a lot. I had a client just today, and she was struggling with, am I going crazy? Sven, I just need to talk to you. You're the voice of sanity. You're an outside observer. Tell me what you see. Because, my spouse is telling me I'm crazy and, it didn't happen that way and so on and so forth. So here's what Chelsea asks over on TikTok. What if I question whether negative memories from my childhood are accurate? What if I question if negative memories from my childhood are accurate? Well, first of all, my first thought is, why would you be questioning whether or not a memory is accurate? Why? Why would you be questioning negative memories? I'll be very honest with you. My first instinct is someone conditioned you to believe that your negative memories of your childhood are inaccurate, which implies somebody has conditioned you to believe that, no, you had a rosy childhood, or no, it wasn't as bad as you think, or whatever it is. But the mere fact that you are questioning your memory of your childhood means that in your past, you were taught to not trust your own inner voice. It's not just about memory per se. It's about trusting your own feel, your own memories, and the quality of those memories in terms of positive or negative. And you were likely taught that your negative memories can't be accurate. You had a great childhood, but more importantly, you don't trust your own voice, which is what you're asking. So what I would offer back to you, Chelsea, you asked the question, what if I question whether negative memories from my childhood are accurate? I want you to assume they are. Act. Whenever you sit down at your journaling, sit down and assume your memories are actually fully accurate. Because in all likelihood, you've been conditioned to believe they aren't. And I want you to assume the opposite. Because what I have found more often than not, when people tell their story and I hear it as an outsider, I'm like, well, that's just fucked. You got fucked over. I can totally understand why you're hurting or whatever it is. Why not, for once in your life, rather than distrusting your memory, why don't you trust it and see what that feels like? Why don't you actually choose to believe that the child actually knows what the hell they're talking about? You, the adult child, that your memory was good. Otherwise, why would you even have these memories to begin with? Now, I'm inclined to believe that the child does remember, which is when my own children come to me with something where I screwed up in their childhood. All right? And I'm inclined, generally, I believe them. Why? I trust my kids. But B, why the hell would they make it up? But C, after I hit about 45, I guarantee you, when my kids were then, my son was, in his early 20s, I guarantee his 20-year-old memory was better than my 45-year-old memory. And that if he has some memory of something distinct, I'm inclined to think it's absolutely real. All right. So why don't you treat yourself as if your memories are real and spot on, and then do the flushing and deal with the implications of it being so. Folks, this has been one delightful evening for me. Rob, what's going on in that fine brain of yours?
You know, we've done almost 180 of these episodes, and I heard something today from you for the first time, and that is inch by inch, life's a cinch. So remember our motto.
Yeah, I always used to tell my lifters that back when I was an NCAA strength coach.
That would make sense.
Yeah, just keep adding weight. Just keep adding weight. If you're trying to get stronger, just every weight, every set, every rep, every workout, keep adding weight. But that was for collegiate athletes, etc. I am not giving lifting advice. Please consult your doctor or personal certified trainer, blah, blah, blah. All right. So Michelle asks, where do you get the book? I have several books, but my two biggest sellers, especially my international bestseller, is There's a Hole in My Love Cup. You can get it at badasscounseling.com. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so on and so forth. But badasscounseling.com is the only place that you can get the paperback, the audiobook, the ebook, and the hardcover. It is the only place on God's green earth where you can get the audiobook. Okay, badasscounseling.com. There's also my other book, Badass Wisdom, which is a 366-day inspirational meditation. That we have a audiobook version of that. And Rob, in fact, recorded both of those right here in his studio. It's my voice, unfortunately. Would have rather had his, but he mastered it. And one of them even includes a little bit of music from him and so forth. So what a delightful zippity zip episode we've had here today, Rob.
Certainly was, sir. Yes.
Zippity
absolutely.
Zip.
You are correct, sir.
All right. So, everyone, I want to thank you for tuning in to another lightning round of the Badass Counseling Show. Please remember that our counseling episodes air on Sundays and our lightning round episodes air on the Badass Counseling Show on Thursdays. You can get the show on Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and most podcast sites. If you want to be on the Badass Counseling Show to be counseled by Sven, i.e. me, write into production at badasscounseling.com with one paragraph, about 200 words or so, with what you're struggling with, what you're going through, and my producers go through and they pick out folks to be on the show. We would love to have you on the show. On behalf of KC over in the booth and Rob the Rocket sitting next to me, whether you are in Australia, Austria, or Swaziland, good to have you here, and have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by two-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.